to be part of this Plastoteck seminar organized by the IPI. I also thank Mr. Balaji for the introduction. I'm still recovering from the profile he expressed today. Going through the brochure, I can decipher that we have a complete gamut of subjects which we are going to cover today. Keynote is one small aspect of what we are going to do through the day. I can see some good sessions on future of commercial vehicles and also on new metal solutions for energy vehicles and some of the pep talks by the MD of some notable companies. And I'm sure that all of you will use this forum to have shared knowledge and shared learnings. Not to take too much time, I will quickly scan through the topic which we have chosen, which is essentially the role of plastics in automotive and how the landscape will change as we go into EV. One of the things which I wanted to mention is that because of confidentiality, I will not be able to express everything because I have some restrictions in Ford. So we will have a brief insight of what we want to speak today. That said, at the end of the presentation, I have key contacts. All of you can contact us and meet us at our Sholingnallur office, the SEZ office, and we can have interactions with our product development and bounce the ideas. As I go through the presentation, I think things will become more clear. Okay, with this, I will make a quick start. I mentioned about the confidentiality. Please don't take any videography. I'm not supposed to be videographed nor recorded. That's a request. And keep whatever I tell today on behalf of Ford, please keep it to yourself. In terms of contents, we'll obviously start with a general introduction and then go to overview of plastics and usage. I know that most of you are very knowledgeable in the plastic industry. I come from purchase, though I have a mechanical qualification, but I have hardly worked in polymers. So I'm sure that many of you must be knowing what I'm telling, but there'll be some insights or some threads which you can pick up as you go forward for your business. We'll also talk about key trends in plastics, global outlook, which I think all of you must be very interested in, and how plastic is going to landscape or span when we do the EV, the electric vehicles, which is the talk of the day. Working in Ford, if I don't talk about Henry Ford, it will be inappropriate. You can do anything if you have enthusiasm, and Henry Ford, as all of you know, introduced the Model T, and he also brought in a lot of innovation. Not many people know that seat belts and child lock were first mass productionized by Ford, and it was never patented. Very few people know about it, and today we use child lock and seat belts in all the vehicles. So what we see in the 1900s as a disruption, we see it today as well in terms of the tipping point of whether IC engines will remain, EV will come, AV will come, whether hybrid will come. All this confusion, all this thoughts which we have in our mind is all going through. In the early 2000 to current time, this is exactly what Henry Ford also experienced at that point in time as well. We obviously opened the highways to mankind, which is through the automotive, and now we are going through the next revolution, which is very different to what we saw earlier in 1900. This is what is a very important slide. I think this has a lot of meaning in terms of what we saw on the Easter morning on 1900 were a couple of vehicles with cycles. And what we are seeing in 1913 is a Model T. That's exactly what is going to happen as we go forward. There is going to be heavy disruption, a lot of innovation. It is not going to be incremental at all. By the time you realize, things would have changed. And I'll give you an example of smartphones. We all used to have 10 years back, 15 years back, simple Nokia mobiles. Today, every person in a village is having a smartphone in India. That is the transformation innovation which is happening. That is the disruption which is happening, which you will see in the automotive segment as well. By the time you realize, EV would have come. And we know that how government is encouraging EV in terms of tax benefits and other incentives. And we also see that companies like Hyundai have already launched EV in the market. So we need to be very conscious of the disruption that is happening, and each of us will face the disruption in our own industry, in our own way. But we need to be conscious of that, and that's why this slide becomes important for us. Just to talk about the Ford global portfolio, on the left side, if you scan, you will find that we generally make the F-150 and the pickups and the SUVs, which is the trend worldwide now. If you see the South America region, we will see more of SUVs and sedans, just to talk about the Ford global portfolio. And if you see Europe, you will find there is a lot of sedans and SUVs, but Europe is also looking at a lot of EV vehicle introduction. Europe and China are going to be the first starting points for EV. If you see India, India is slowly moving into the SUV segment. Still sedan is required. But again, here the aspirational value is going down. Again, an example I'll give you. 10 years back, if you said, I don't have a car and I came by auto or taxi, people will look at you. Today, if you say, I'm coming by Uber, people will be very happy with you. Oh, you're taking the latest technology. So things have changed. The car segment has changed in terms of the aspiration. It has become more of utility and need. We don't know whether metros will survive more or cars will survive more. That's the kind of disruption we are seeing in the market. With respect to Thailand, as I mentioned, will be more of the pickup. And then China is obviously the hobnob and the hot point of the EV segment. A lot of startup companies in EV in China. So now coming on to the subject, which will be of use to some of you, is that overall weight of the vehicle. I don't know how many of you must be knowing this. Overall weight of the vehicle of plastics is about 15%. Out of this 15%, you will find that PP consumes about 50%. PP and TPE consumes about 50%. So you have the door trims, you have the bumpers, you have the instrument fascia, which we call as IP substrate. All these interior parts and a mix of exterior parts, they consume about 50%. We have nylon, which has about close to about 8 to 10%, which is essentially the areas under the hood, and also where you have roughage, like the gear knobs. And as I go into the presentation, you will see where the applications are. So overall weight of a vehicle, typical SUV weight, plastic weight would be about 150 to 155 kgs. Now, I will come to your question, what is going on in your mind after a couple of slides is what is going to happen when we launch EV. So like I mentioned to you, we have the interiors. Some of the things I'll be sharing with the IPI, and we will share this presentation with the team, whichever is possible from our side. In terms of the interiors, I mentioned to you the instrument fascia is all PP. You have the door handles, you have PU, which is the steering wheel. You have the grab handles, which is made up of PP and molten color. And then you have the ABS, where you have more decorative surfaces required. So that's how the interior view spans out. In terms of the console, you will find that we use TPO, and we also use, in cases of armrest and door panels, mix of TPO and PP. So these usages are going to continue as we go into the EV segment as well. What is important is also to understand that many of this are also going to be used through 3D printing. I am not covering that subject because I have been restrained and constrained, but Ford does use a lot of 3D printing at the prototype level. So you should think, and we should have some seminars on 3D printing as we go forward, because that prototyping into mass production is going to create a lot of disruption in the plastic segment. Plastic is ideally suited if you have to do batch production through 3D printing or additive manufacturing. If you see the exterior, you have the lighting, which is made up of polycarbonate. You have the grills, which is made up of ABS, because you need to chrome it, so you need ABS for that. bumpers are all TPOs, and then you have the mud flaps, which is made up of PP, and we are increasingly seeing that even the door panels and the tailgate are made up of plastics or made up of TPO. So that is something which is changing. I'm not sure whether any Indian company is doing it, but we definitely are doing that in the matured market in Ford, where we use plastics for making the tailgate. So that's a good entry point for many of the manufacturers who can do molding on the tailgate. So metal to plastic is changing. That landscape is changing. Powertrain, as I mentioned, more heat resistant. So you need to have more of nylon and HDPE, especially on the fuel tank, which is now made of plastic. And just for information, again, Ford was the first company which introduced plastics in the fuel tank. So what are the key trends? CO2 emission control will continue to remain a challenge. So designers will look at CO2 emission. Many of the manufacturers have tab on CO2 emission controls. Fuel efficiency will continue to be a challenge. Aesthetic looks, better fit and finish, corrosion resistant, and design flexibility. These are some of the things which designers will continue to explore. And then as we go into lightweighting, this is going to become more critical in terms of metal to plastic and thin wall plastic. I think there are some technologies which we can use in thin wall plastic and also in molding, where we can use bubbles inside the expansion molding, and not to use more of plastics but use chemicals which can occupy the hollow positions. So we can make pillars and hollow parts using that technology. So there is a lot of work which is going on in terms of lightweighting, and this is going to be a continuous challenge. Engineering plastics will continue to be explored, and we will see a lot of changes in the engineering plastic as well. And then eco-friendly plastics. This is a separate subject on its own in terms of what we want to do in terms of recycling and things like that. So that will continue. We'll have to look at some other day in terms of recyclable, but that is something which is also very critical. And then electrification. Electrification, high volt specialties plastics will be a challenge in terms of the electrification, and we'll see a lot of nylon substitutes there coming in, and aerodynamics. So the global outlook, the EV sales will continue to exceed and surge. We currently have EV sales which is in the range of about 5.1 million. I mentioned to you Europe and China will continue to have higher amount of EV sales. China has a lot of startup companies who are working on the EV vehicles, because EV is the starting point for AV. If you have to do autonomous, you have to do electric vehicles first. Fuel economy will continuously be challenged. One of the problems with EV is the range anxiety. There is an anxiety in terms of whether my vehicle will reach 300 kilometers from point A to point B. I think that's a challenge which continue to remain. So battery chemistry will get evolved, but that's something which will impede the EV development. But EV is there as we go forward in terms of how the industry shapes up. Demography will have its own say in terms of the EV vehicles. And then by 2040, I think there's a report which says that nearly 40% of our vehicles will be electric vehicles, and there will be a combination of IC engines and electric vehicles going together. So before I go to the EV factor, I'll just show you one video of which will be very good for you. Maybe you would have seen it in the website, but let me see if this works, and then. the video will not work, but we just wanted to show it. Maybe later, at later point in time, during the break, the team can see it. It's a good video which says that the pulling power of EV is equal to an IC engine, and there's a 1 million pound of 20 trailers in the US, which was pulled by a EV prototype F-150. So I just wanted to show that. Just to give you the information, the powertrain weight is going to actually increase when we go into the EV. You will find that currently the powertrain weight is about 600 to 650 kilos. As we go into EV and you use more of traction motors and more of battery pack, the weight is going to increase by nearly 20-25%. Again, it comes back to plastics. How to reduce and offset that weight so that you can remove the range anxiety. So it's like chicken and egg, coming and going types. So you will find that it's not easy to get into EV, and the concern which many people have when EV comes, whether I have plastics or not, it is not correct. Plastics will continue, polymers will continue. However, the demography will change in terms of which polymers we use. So this is the final slide before I end. Nylon will continue to increase. As I mentioned to you, it has its own benefits under the hood application. ABS and PC will be stable because your headlamps will still be there and it will continue at the same level. PET and PBT will, today the usage is low, but it will drastically increase because you have high voltage requirements in terms of electric interconnects. PU will increase in terms of, like I mentioned to you, in terms of bubble formation, hollow molding, PU will be used, and seating systems. Carbon fiber, again, couple of years back, carbon fiber was an important item to be used, but because of cost reasons, it is not taking up. But as we get more matured in terms of getting the right technology, I think carbon fiber will also play a role, but today it is sort of same. In terms of PP, the PP, TP and TPU, like I mentioned, tailgate and all made of TPU, combination plastics, that will increase. PE and PVC will decrease, and then elastomers will remain the same. Elastomers, in fact, could decrease because of the reasons that your powertrain is moving out and EV is coming in. So this is how the landscape in terms of the summary of impact on metals in EV will take place. I'm sure most of it you would have known, or you would have had some inputs. It is also advisable that you go through one of the recent publications of Niti Aayog on EV. Maybe I'll send it to Mr. Balaji. It's a beautiful publication which Niti Aayog has done of how to introduce EV in India. It is going to sort of have a severe upscale. We already have tax benefit, which was announced in this budget. We now have GST reduction, and then we have a clear work plan. So this tipping point may come sooner than later. So we need to keep an eye, and how we manage our business portfolio in this changing dynamics will play a very important role. So this is briefly what I wanted to share, and I also mentioned to you about 3D printing. Maybe at a later point we can have some discussions, maybe closed room discussions on 3D printing, because what is important for all of you is not the status check on what you're seeing on the screen, but what is important is how am I moving the business for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Am I going to stay where I am, or am I going to move the business out? Maybe we are into molding, maybe we are into machinery, maybe we are into hoses, maybe we are doing some auto components. But the bottom line is, how am I going to prepare for the future? And if we stay where we are, things will not change. We need to see what is coming at us. And like I told about the smartphone example, we need to tune ourselves, including companies like Ford, especially in India. Like I mentioned, I am giving these contacts to Mr. Balaji. My request is you send in a mail to me or to any of my team members. We will put you in touch with our product development in Chennai or in the region, which is based out of China or Australia. We'll obviously have an NDA agreement signed with you. which is a non-disclosure agreement. Some of the companies like Brakes India and Syndrome Auto Corp, they are all already working with us. But some of the other companies which are not in direct touch with us, we can provide a platform for you to share what you want to give in the automotive segment, or even in the non-automotive, but maybe in the factory. Because you have all the ideas. And if you start discussing with our product development, maybe we can hit a gold mine. And we can also extend it, and when you're in the US or in Europe, we can link you to the advanced technology team who can then take on the idea which you have, and jointly we can see how we can change the landscape, and we'll be very proud if we do these things from India, from our own country, if we create innovation. So these are the contacts. Please don't hesitate. Please call us or get in touch with us through mail, and we will be all the more happy to work with all of you in whichever small way we can. Okay. Thank you very much, and once again, thanks to IPI for inviting. I'm still recovering from the shock of my profile. I wish all of you, on behalf of Ford and my team members, a very great day today. I wish you personally and professionally a lot of happiness, good health, and great career and great money-making business. Thank you very much.